Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we're really excited to have on as a guest Kevin Timm from Seek Outside. So Seek Outside is an American company making American products for us as hunters and shooters and hikers and backpackers and campers. So if you don't know anything about Seek Outside, if you've not seen any of the stuff that they do, they make world-class backpacks, world-class tents, hot tents, all this really cool stuff. And their background and innovations of what they do and how they do it is just absolutely amazing. So they've really taken our industry and made it better for all of us by coming out and just making better products that work for us. And these are built and designed by people who actually use them and know what they're doing. So we're really excited to have Kevin on the show and talk about his company, Seek Outside, an American company at that. So without further ado, here we go. All right, before we get started on the interview, I want to take a quick moment and thank our sponsors. I'd like to thank Krieger Barrels. Krieger is a proud sponsor of the show and maker of fine cut rifled barrels. You can go over to KriegerDirect.com and place your order and get your barrel in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you're in the market for a world-class barrel and you need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. We'd also like to thank TriggerTech. TriggerTech is also a proud sponsor of the show. Makes world-class triggers. We put them in all of our custom rifles here, and we recommend them to customers that, custom or not, if you're upgrading your rifle, one of the best things you can do is put a good trigger in it. So stop over to TriggerTech.com. That's TriggerTech.com today. All right, so I've been really excited for this interview, and like I said in the opening of the podcast here, you know, one of the things that we're really trying to do is bring on and interview people with American companies making products right here in the United States. I mean, we go through this. And anytime that we're buying something for a business or for our personal use, we try to do a ton of research to see if we're buying something that's, you know, sold here, but also made here. And you would be surprised on how many of the products that we buy are made overseas, and you guessed it, China, Korea, all these other countries. And that's great that the products are here and that they're offering them at a lesser price, but you know, it's us that are paying the price. You know, we're paying the price because we've got people making, marketing, and selling things that aren't in our industry, that know nothing about the things that we do or how we use them. They're just doing best practices and going overseas and trying to duplicate what appears to be the same product, only to give us a totally crappy product at a slight discount price, and you get what you pay for. So anytime we're in the market for something, I always personally try to take the time to seek out American-made companies. So I don't want to make the podcast too long, but I do want to just say we're really excited to have Kevin take the time to come on the podcast, talk a little bit about the product. And like I said, if you're in the market for world-class products, there's so many reasons why you should look at their tents and why you should look at their backpacks. And again, you're buying an American-made product that's made and sold right here in the United States. So to get this interview going, without further ado, let's get Kevin on the line and let's get into a great interview with Kevin Timm of Seek Outside. All right, so with me today is Kevin Timm. Kevin is the owner and founder of Seek Outside, and we're excited to have him on the show because of the quality of tents and the quality of backpacks and stuff that they make and made here in the USA. So, Kevin, thank you so much for taking time to come on to the show.
How you doing?
Good, sir. How are you doing?
I am doing fine. I'm just looking at a cloudy day. Getting ready to go do an adventure in southern New Mexico for a little bit, and then come back and prepare for Western Hunt Expo and show off our new products and everything.
That is awesome. And what do you got going on in New Mexico?
I'm just going to be bird hunting, quail hunting in the southern part close to Mexico.
Time off or vacation?
I own the company. I'm still available to work. But, you know, and I will still communicate with our staff. But for the most part, I'll be spending time bird hunting and maybe contemplating, thinking, you know.
Yeah.
You know how his bosses are.
That's for sure. So You guys make awesome stuff right here in the United States, but can you tell everybody a little bit about, what the history of your company, what got you started into making your product and really led into the business that you have right now?
Well, we started in right around 2010. At the time, I was hunting and I was frustrated with the gear choices in hunting. I've always, I always have had kind of a mindset of tweaking, customizing things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I also did a lot of trail running and lightweight backpacking. And there was a giant disparity between hunting gear and the more lightweight backpacking gear. The hunting gear was oftentimes 3 times as heavy, oftentimes had different feature sets that, some of them were positive for hunting, but some of them not necessarily were. So I started just kind of wanting to screw around with our own tents. I had an epiphany while out snowshoeing in the winter, and I came home and told my wife. She told me it was a dumb idea, and then I kind of begged her a few times, and eventually we got to using something, and we're like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." And we were using it as a family, and then that led into the business, which kind of led into thinking about gear more, right, and starting to think about the pain points and the things that I didn't necessarily like with other gear, and finding our own direction within it. And that is, over the course of, we're in, I think, our 11th year now, maybe even going on 12. Over the course of this time, it's been really good, and we have a fairly well-established brand. We have a lot of respect from other people in the outdoor industry, and that's kind of what we do, and we have our different take. If I was to say there's anything that we've really focused on doing, I would say our biggest thing has been to bring more of a lightweight mindset to a rugged all-season hunting capable gear. And I would say early on, it played a paradigm shift for a lot of hunters as far as the mentality, because if they had grown up or been primarily a hunter, they just thought about gear differently. But over time, it seems to me that the two have melded much more strongly, and the two concepts, and it leads to very effective backpacking and hunting gear.
So it's really interesting how you approached it, because I often find the people that make great gear for the outdoors are usually those that are in it and trying to solve problems, like finding shortcomings. And one of the big things I think, and I'm 50, so I'm not too old, but back in even the late 80s and early 90s in the military, it almost like that type of pack bled its way into hunting. Like it had to be solid frame, weigh a ton, be cumbersome, hard to carry around. And that really is a toll on a hunter when they get out and start doing really mountain hunting. Now, on the Eastern Coast, we don't have what you guys have there, but it makes a big difference.
It does. And I mean, yeah, those packs aren't really necessarily super efficient for when you get into the real steep stuff. And they, a lot of times they would have soft-faced fabrics that were camouflaged, that people thought were maybe more quiet, but then you were also catching on branches and stuff because you had this big cumbersome pack where you were going through the woods. And right now, I mean, I'll say that we're extremely fortunate as hunters. I would say probably 20 years ago, it was going to be hard to go on a November hunting trip and not carry 50 or 60 pounds unless you were basically sleeping under a tarp. And now you can literally get away with 35, 40 pounds total weight, and be relatively comfortable as well. And it allows you to be much more mobile. It allows you to put more distance on, more animals. It allows you to handle gnarly terrain better. So there's a ton of advantages.
The one thing that I found is either when you went really heavy, especially with the older pack designs, and that's what sort of led me in this direction with what you guys do, is you forego stuff you should take, and so you leave stuff behind trying to cut weight, which leads to a little bit less than pleasurable experience because there's some luxury items that are just awesome to take, but then also your risk of injury. At 50 now, carrying weight is awful, and just a couple pounds makes a world of difference. And I've watched people tumble with heavy packs, heavier than what they should be carrying. You can really get hurt if you're trying to do extreme, especially us older. As we're getting older, we're pig-headed, and we're going to make it to the top one way or the other, and sometimes that's not a good thing. So, talk a little bit about that and going after that lightweight version and maybe what we've changed from then until now.
Well, my first hunting packs were recreational packs, but they were more like the 80s, 90s rec packs. I thought there were some promising designs in there. The Ospreys and Danas, some of the designs in there had some good stuff. And then for some reason, it seems like the rec market decided to diverge and became about looking pretty on the store shelf and making you think it had effective features. But you would buy the packs and you'd get sold on it in the store, like, oh, heat molded foam and this and that. And then you put 35 pounds in it and carry it for about an hour and be like, this thing sucks. Yeah. Like they lost the fundamentals in favor of features that they thought they could sell to people in a store. Meanwhile, the hunting market seemed to go the other direction and be like, well, we need 24 pockets, and we need a sturdy frame, and all of a sudden you have 11, 12-pound packs that were big, heavy, cumbersome. And, right now I could probably take a pack, a tent, a stove, sleeping bag, and a pad which will keep me comfy at 20 degrees and be able to carry an elk out for 12 pounds. So that gives you kind of an idea how much things have changed. And while the rec packs had the older rec packs had some promising stuff, they also weren't maybe quite as burly as they needed to be. So during the summer, I would use these relatively minimalist and lightweight packs. And then during the winter or during fall, I would move to these external frame packs or whatever. And every time it came fall, I always found myself going to the pack and being like, am I sure there's not something that I can do here that will be better? Right. And not even from a designer at that point, just from how can I get this thing to be more wieldy in the lighter, right? And more comfortable. And then over time, I started putting my own frames and stuff and finding that, the light packs weren't necessarily made. Like the stitching and stuff wasn't reinforced. But you know what? They weren't reinforced enough to be able to do the demanding uses of a hunting pack. But, reinforcing stitching doesn't add a whole lot of weight to something. It just adds a little bit of time to the manufacturing process.
Yeah, and it's amazing like how many people involved in our industry, like we see it at shows and even in your industry, I'm sure that are involved in either designing, making, manufacturing, and putting all of these products on the market, but yet they aren't really, they're not backpackers, they're not hunters, they're not in our industry. Like we see in the gun building industry, there's a lot of people in the gun building industry that aren't shooters. And when you have someone like yourself that has the experience to look at it, like I couldn't tell you the first thing about designing a pack, but I know when I'm wearing one, some of them really suck. So, yeah. But you have that sort of intimate knowledge to it that's really made a game changer. Like it's really awesome that people like you take the time to innovate and say, okay, I can make this better, because it lends a lot to us in the industry as far as just much better quality made by people who actually use them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we spent a lot of time with them. We usually, oftentimes, I use imperfect versions to try to find flaws and stuff. And oftentimes I'm one of the more risque users. Like I went on an Alaska trip, didn't seam seal my pack. While a lot of guys are more paranoid about the water penetration and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? It wasn't even an issue in an unseam sealed pack, and we had rain for about 40 hours straight on our hunt. So,
in going right down that route here, you do something quite different with your packs that I find actually amazing. Like, you use a completely different material when you make them to make them almost waterproof or waterproof, where most of your other packs require some type of rain cover or something to keep them dry. And I always find that to be it's a pain because you got to get in and out of your pack and get everything wet anyway. But then, man, if you take a dump in a river or a good tumble, all your stuff's getting wet. So what about the materials that you guys are using that really makes the pack quite different from almost everything else that you see on the market?
Well, wait till you see what we're coming out with in about a month.
Oh, really?
But I'll just speak to what we are right now, right? We're up in the game in about a month. Well, early on, I've always thought that the rain cover was a relatively stupid concept. It was a Band-Aid or not taking the time to do other things possibly as well as you could do them.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, we had, we've been bold in our approach to products. We did have other hunters and other companies, of course, criticize our choices, right? Instead of tried and true Cordura, but articulating the benefits of a hunt as a hunter is relatively easy because not only that, they clean up from blood very easily as well. A Cordura pack, I have a German short-haired pointer sitting on the couch over here. If I carry an animal out in a Cordura pack, that pointer is going to be paying attention to that pack probably for years to come.
Right.
But with the X-Pack fabric or the waterproof laminate fabric, I'll expand that out a little bit. The waterproof laminate fabric we use, I literally can wipe it down or I can throw it in a washing machine, no detergent, hang it to dry, just quick cycle and hang it to dry. And my pointer doesn't care. She doesn't sniff at it for years. So there is advantages beyond that. But I can tell you a story about the genesis of the packs. Nathan, who works for us, he came out here to hunt and he had this other pack brand. It was before we were making packs. And I asked him, I said, what are you going to do when it rains? I said, that thing's going to get a lot of water. And he's like, oh, I got a rain cover I'm going to put over it. I said, it's been my experience. And he's like, besides, it never rains in Colorado. Big fallacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, been my experience, you spend 5 days in the fall in the backcountry, you're going to get some weather. And I said, it's also been my experience that pack covers are incredibly inefficient,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't want to put one on because you don't want to stop. Then you have a rain cover that might blow around or get caught on things. So you try to avoid it. And then you finally decide to put it on, but you found out that your pack is actually kind of wet now anyway. And so you have this cover on. Now you want to reach something that's in your pack. You can't get anything in your pack without taking the cover off. And so it just becomes really cumbersome when it'd be much easier just to solve it from the get-go with a waterproof or near waterproof fabric that you didn't have to deal with all those hassles. And so he went out in the woods on his first elk hunt. He got himself a nice bull, had 3 days of weather, sleet stuff. His pack weight gained probably 3 pounds. His rain cover, he never really wanted to put on because of the limited access. Then, of course, he's carrying out an animal. And when he has antlers on his pack, he's not going to be putting a rain cover on either. So the whole thing, so he just became really a convert right then
Mm-hmm.
to it conceptually. And myself, I mean, you mentioned like I did a caribou hunt in the Arctic a few years ago, and I flipped my boat in the river, and my pack took a ride upside down in my kayak, probably a couple hundred yards. And it wasn't a big deal. A couple teaspoons of water got in there, but it wasn't enough to be a deal breaker. And I hadn't seam sealed it or anything.
That's pretty awesome. And in the wrong scenario, if you dunk your pack underwater, and in really bad situations where it's cold or you've got a lot of wind, and that could turn easily your hunt into almost either a rescue or a life-threatening situation if all of your stuff just gets soaked.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, the blood thing was funny because I went out on an elk hunt in Idaho, and my goal was to pack the entire elk out piece by piece, which I did. I'll never do that again. I'll take more help next time, or I'll let the help more. So, but when I got back to camp, my pack was completely soaked in blood. I mean, it was everywhere, and I must have washed it 100 times. And I kept looking at it because we were continuing on the hunt. We had other animals we could harvest, and the whole time I'm thinking about my pack, like, did I just create bait? I mean, it's completely soaked in elk blood, and here I am, just on the Montana Idaho border, and I'm thinking I probably smell really good to things that would be interested in what's wearing this pack.
Mm-hmm. I've had that thought as well in the backcountry. Like sometimes feeling like if with a real bloody pack, mm-hmm. right? Like, am I turning from hunter to hunted in this scenario here?
Yeah, makes you really be quick and really paying attention to those like snaps and low noises that just get your attention that normally wouldn't.
Yeah.
What about the lightweight version? Your pack's flex, which I find is to be awesome. But then you're really, like, we tell guys at the shooting school and other events, like, always, try to get away with the smallest pack you can get. And a lot of it was because of trying to save weight, and so they don't take too much stuff. But now that you've got these much lighter weight, waterproof versions of these packs, what do you tell guys? Like, what should they be looking for size and weight-wise when they're selecting, like, one of your packs? Because you have a wide variety. I mean, you got packs that are big enough guys can take a 10-day Arctic trip with. And then you've got really awesome day packs.
It really depends on the person. There's some people that can barely do an overnight in a 5,000 cubic inch pack. And there's some people that can go out in the woods for 2 weeks in the same pack. So there's a lot of dependency there. But I would probably say, just in generality, it also depends on the seasons that people prefer. Like, for instance, archery season, if you're primarily an archery hunter, you can literally get by with a 3,500 to 4,500 pack pretty well. And I'm assuming that you are backpack hunting, right? Not hunting a trailhead. And I guess it's probably just because that's the type of hunting I normally do. So that's my reference point. But like a November hunt, you might really want more in the 6,000-7,000 range. You have a bigger jacket, you have a bigger shelter, you have heavier pad, heavier sleeping bag, all that stuff. So there's some dependencies there. I tend to think our Lanner or its cousin that is going to come out this year, which will be called the Kenai. I tend to think that those hit the sweet spot for most people. They work really well as a day pack. And it really goes from about 3,500 to 6,000 relatively easy as a pack. So I think that one, for me, that is probably my favorite design that I can do most stuff with. Now, if I was long range hunting, I'm really surprised, and I'm letting out new product stuff because our Saker and our Brooks are very likely to be discontinued this year. If I was long range hunting, I really could see the Saker and Brooks being some, because those carry a gun really well. Even in a day setup, they carry a heavy rifle very well, and they carry optics very well. Even though they're insanely huge, right? It's just that design really well. The difference in the added weight between the packs is not really that much. It's, to go from a 5,000 to a 6,000 might be an ounce or two. With what we have coming out in about a month, we're going to have basically what I would say is, they always say that you can have 2 out of 3 things.
Right.
I think you can have pretty much all 3 now, that you can have the durability, the lightweight, and the waterproofiness all in one package, and have it work super well. So I think that you can have all of it, and the weight doesn't really matter that much. Like, I would have no qualms taking what will be named the Kenai, which will be out in about a month. I have no qualms taking that on almost any hunt I'll ever do.
Nice. And then you got the Peregrine 35, the Lanner 54. Mm-hmm. Are they going to stay in place as well, along with the Kenai?
Yeah.
Because I think both packs are awesome. Like maybe somebody leaving camp and going out, on a day hunt, just a base camp type thing. I think I really like the design of the Peregrine. I really love the Lanner. I think that's awesome, like just as a dual purpose pack. So you could take it day hiking or day packing on a 1 or 2 day trip and it not be too big. And then
the Kenai is really going to be a Lanner on the integrated with asymmetrical side pockets.
Nice.
It's something that was very popular in our custom shop.
Okay.
I have a tendency to prefer the integrated pack more than the Breakaway. I get why people buy the Breakaway and have a preference for the Breakaway a lot of times. But for me, the integrated is simple enough, and I can carry meat in it more than easy enough. And it's just as easy, and it saves me about 8 ounces. And and it's also just a little simpler platform to use. Mm-hmm. So that's difference there. I have no qualms using a Lanner and stuff like that. And there is some advantages to being able to do the Breakaway setup. But for me, I can get so much of it done. It's big enough that it doesn't matter.
You can tell it means a lot to you when you're talking about we're saving 8 ounces. I mean, weight really boils down to every ounce that you can save without sacrificing any of the quality. Is the Peregrine a Breakaway, or is that integrated frame as well?
Peregrine is a Breakaway. Mm-hmm. So if they have a bird name, they are on the Breakaway platform.
Okay.
And if they don't, they are on an integrated platform. But the belt, harness, everything is exactly the same. You outfit them on the same frame height, same belt. They're going to carry weight exactly the same.
For those that are listening, they might not know the difference between the Breakaway and what the usefulness of that would be. And I sort of agree with you. I think I'd rather have the integrated frame. But for those that are listening that might not understand what they would use the Breakaway for, you do a great job explaining it on your website, but basically it would be for carrying weight in between your pack and the frame. Example, like packing out an animal or something else extra that you wanted in there.
Yeah, the advantages of the Breakaway are that you can basically slide the pack bag back and carry extra load between the two, between the frame. Also, you can take the pack bag off, just use it to carry quarters. You can switch between a 3,000 cubic inch pack bag and a 6,000 if you want. Relatively easy. Now, you can get almost all those things on integrated as well. With integrated, carrying, if you have a Talon on, you can compress anything on the same way you would with a Breakaway, right? And also, you can swap different pack bags. It just takes you a couple extra minutes because you have to move the harness over as well. But that's really about it. The benefits of the integrated are there's less straps, a little less fiddle factor. I personally think it's actually easier to haul quarters in because, like, say with the Lanner / Kenai, which would be the Kenai, all I have to do is unzip the zipper, slide it into an integrated load shelf in there, tension it up, zip it back up, pull a couple compression straps, and start walking.
And you're on the races.
You'll have some blood inside your pack, but you can wipe it out in a creek. You can put your gear in a trash bag to keep it isolated from the meat, or you can put the meat in some sort of waterproof container while you're carrying it around like a trash bag while you're carrying it, right? And then take it off and let the air dry,
right? Or
let it air out more. And all of those, it's not like when you're using the Breakaway and you have meat in there. Yeah, you can get a little more airflow, but you're not going to get a lot more airflow. For the most part, the meat is up against your back and you're creating heat anyway.
What about on those platforms? Can you use the talon to secure a firearm to the back of it if they're climbing or if they're just trying to get the rifle out of their hands for a little while?
Yeah, you can do. There's a few different ways to carry a rifle. On the Breakaway, one of the advantages, if you don't have a fully loaded pack, is that there's a little kind of V in between the top parts of the frame, and you can slide the pack over that, right, or the rifle over that. If you have a full pack, we used to have this product called the gun hook. That works. It's a relatively easy concept. The reason we don't offer it anymore is we just thought it didn't look quite as finished, and there wasn't really a way to make it look as finished as we wanted it to. Because essentially it used bike tire to grip the frame. But there's a few other solutions as well. You can also use our Gatekeeper straps, which you can move just about anywhere on the pack. Our compression system is adaptable. You can use that to hook it on the rear of the pack on one side, which is actually how I do it when I don't need to have a rifle handy. Some people put them in a pocket. The Batwing style Saker Brooks, that worked really well in that you could fold these over and have the gun underneath there, and it carried a gun super well center of your back for like a day pack. You still will be able to do that even though those packs will be kind of going away, because their side pockets will be available as an option, so you'll be able to run them without a pack bag and stuff like that. So you will be able to do it. It's just going to be named something different. There's also a couple other solutions I've seen that I haven't really played with, but there's different ways to do it. There is the difference with us, which probably is frustrating to customers, that we don't just say, well, here's your product that does it, and you just always use this product and do it. We just feel that it isn't really something that necessarily needs a separate product, that you can do it on every pack relatively easy, just moving a couple things around, but it's more of a platform that allows you to do it.
That's pretty awesome. And then the new material, before we start talking about tents, because I'm really excited about the tents as well, is the new material going to be across the board, or is it going to be an option with the materials you're making the packs out of?
It will be our primary fabric.
So it'll be on pretty much all of them across the board. And when do you think this will launch as far as their availability to the customers?
Early February.
That is awesome. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your tents and then the hot tents. You offer a TP style tent, and then you also offer them in a hot tent. Can you talk a little bit about, and then the tarp as well, which we'll touch base on maybe at the end of the podcast about safety and guys coming out west and things they should think about to prepare for. But the TP style tent that you offer, why, how? I mean, where did it, with all the tents and how they've sort of transformed over the years, you found that the TP style still has a place in our world, especially in hunting?
It has a big place in our world. It's very effective for those shoulder seasons, and it's very efficient for weight as well. They are typically they're considered floorless. Really, they're flooring optional. You can throw down a tarp or something else if you want to make a floor, or a ground sheet, things like that. But they have a tendency to work really, really well in those shoulder seasons. Now, we do have options that you can have inners and stuff that create a fully bug-proof environment for times if bugs, or in your case in the east, ticks, things like that are more of a concern. Not really that big of a concern here. But that heated shelter, let's just take, I won't even take a late season hunt. I'll say like October 15th. You don't have 12 hours of daylight. You have probably an effective hunting period of 7:30 to 6:30 or something like that, right? You got about 11. You have a lot of tent time. If you're at high altitude, which you're probably going to be if you're going after elk or mule deer, it's still probably going to be chilly. It's probably going to be freezing or below. There's a possibility that you could get some real cold weather. I've seen first season hunts here in Colorado have temperatures of 5 or 6 degrees at times. So you can get a pretty significant high country cold front. So having the wood stove really helps take that chill off. It also gives you something to do while you're at camp, because you're probably going to have about 12 hours a night that you're literally in your tent, right? So it gives you something to do along with that. Now, as you get into the later seasons, it becomes even more and more. So I went on a deer hunt 2, maybe 3 years ago. I took a Dyneema Cimarron and a U-turn stove. It's like a 4-pound cabin. It is a heated 4-pound cabin. And the place I hiked into, turned out there were a couple other people there in MSR, Big Agnes style tents. But there was plenty of real estate around for us all to hunt. But they had been getting temperatures in the teens or lower every night, and they were a little sick of it. And when they saw my 4-pound heated cabin, it was, because that was stove and tent, that they were really stoked, and they came in, they brought some whiskey and shared it with me. And for a few nights, every night, they sat in that tent with me before they went to bed. And I kid you not, a week later, they went and bought a 12-person for themselves.
And yeah, you offer like sizes for, single, doubles, and clean up to, group size. And, for those that don't know, having a sub 4-pound setup, even in a tent world, unless you're doing that's crazy lightweight, and have heat in it as well.
Yeah. And most an MSR Hubba 2-person, which probably one of the most popular tents ever made, right? I think it has a claimed weight of 3 pounds, 8 ounces. What you get when it's shipped to you with all the stakes is about 3 pounds, 15 ounces. And it's got a much smaller footprint than that. And it's going to be relatively small little tent without a whole lot of space for one person. If you put 2 people in there, it's going to be cramped, right? You probably only want to be in there with someone you really like, not really your smelly hunting buddy, right? And then you don't really have space for where your rifle goes, things like that as well, your gear. Best case scenario, you're making a fire outside, and you can make a fire outside, and I love standing around a campfire. A lot of times when it's like 20 degrees out, a campfire isn't the most efficient thing of heat, especially if you have a good breeze or something. A lot of times the smoke's in your face, or you're not really getting the heat. You end up going to bed and you're freezing your tail off, and then it's hard to get warm, and it just kind of creates this whole thing. Your gear gets a little moist, gets wet. With the 4-pound shelter, you can use the stove to dry out gear. You can literally have 75, 80 degrees inside while it's snowing outside. Like on this trip that I was talking about earlier, one morning I woke up and we were socked in. The visibility was 50 yards at best. I was like, no real point in going out. I can't even see an animal very far away, unless I bump one. So I made a fire, sat in my tent, and had a good time for 2-3 hours until the weather started to lift a little bit, and then I got up and went out and hunted.
That is awesome. And for us out east, and I don't want to make us sound like, we're all sort of silly or don't know what we're doing, but, my first trip out to the Rockies was earth shattering. I mean, I've never really hunted in that environment before, and we don't have altitude here. We don't have weather fronts to come through, but a lot of guys to go out there, they don't understand layering of gear. They don't understand the quality of the gear that they should be wearing to deal with sweat and perspiration. And you get all heated up, you get sweaty, and then the temperature drops. Your gear gets wet from the rain, and all you're in is a tent, and it's still raining, and you can't really make a fire, and you can't dry your gear. 2 or 3 days of that, and you are going to be one miserable person.
Oh, and it drives people out of the woods. And I will agree. I mean, I've ran into people from the East and Midwest that have been like, man, I thought I was ready for this. And this is a whole lot more than I ever imagined. And I'm super fit. And and I could take a rosy situation and still make it sound, because you could literally have 60-degree days with bright sun in November. And you could get overheated and slightly sunburned. And it's not uncommon for us to have a 40-degree temperature swing just because you're up so high, there's not a whole lot of cloud cover, things like that. You might be down in the teens at night and a sunburn, and you can still get chilled, even though you were warm all day.
Mm. There's something to be said about being able to at least dry your clothes and warm yourself just a little bit. For guys that are coming out, because I mean, you've been out there, you've hiked all over the Rockies. What advice would you give to guys that are coming out, and just not even just gear wise, but safety wise? Because that's a big one. A lot of people don't realize what they're getting into. Sometimes they're counting on guides that maybe don't have a lot of experience there to begin with, and they get themselves in a bad position. I can give you a horror story where we have a client that was left on the mountain overnight in a snowstorm. The guide left him on horseback to go get another client. The storm rolled in. He couldn't get back to get him, and he sat there overnight in a snowstorm with a jacket in the middle of the Rockies. So, I mean, that could have been the end of the game for him. But what advice do you give people coming out besides, good equipment, good gear, keep your gear dry, the hot tent? I can't imagine, like, even if you split the parts between two people, like what we'll do is, and somebody carry the stove, the other person carry the shelter, so not everybody's bearing all the weight. What advice would you give them to come out to have an enjoyable hunt and to have a safe hunt?
There's the East to West podcast. Nathan, who works for us, has been on that one a couple times because he is an East to West hunter. He lives in Tennessee. I would say the first thing is to go on a couple backpacking trips, right? If you're planning a backpack hunt. A lot of guys haven't backpacked enough, and so they just don't know what they don't know, and they carry way too much stuff or just the wrong kind of stuff. Going to where you kind of have your feeling for what you need, right? It's almost always going to change. 2, altitude can be a real bear for people. It can. And there isn't necessarily a prediction for how hard altitude can mess with you. The one thing I will say that is good, that is real good, is a lot of my buddies and friends that I've met from the East, they're some pretty tough sons of guns. There's not a lot of quitting them, right? And they're pretty resourceful as well. And that really, really helps them a lot. But the altitude is a big one. And just kind of knowing backpacking, having your style, right? And being comfortable with your style. because I've seen people that go backpacking, and I'm like, what the heck do you have going on here? You know, they have 2 or 3 loads of their own gear to take in. And it's like, really, if that's what you want to do, but that's way too much effort. You can get up there with 1 load and get out,
Yeah.
you're going to regret all that extra gear at some point. So those things, there are knowledgeable people that do videos and stuff on YouTube. Those would probably be, I would probably recommend finding some of the more knowledgeable people on that. You also probably could really, as far as people, sometimes people are too gung-ho and are like, I'm going to go so light. And they literally don't take enough to be comfortable in the woods. I usually call it sort of the rebound point, as we refer to it, which is a lot of times people will go, what the typical thing that happens is someone goes out in the woods and they carry 70 pounds first time. They say, and I've seen this. I've talked to the guys that have done this. I've talked to people that are CrossFit athletes, like they compete in the CrossFit games, or they've been Army Rangers, very, very fit, and think, well, I'm tough. They get out here with 65, 70 pounds, and after 3,000, 4,000 vertical feet, they're like, whoa, I'm not doing that again. and then they might go and they might totally correct too much in the wrong way. And they're like, next time they're like, I got my 21-pound pack, and they're like, this is great. And then they find out, ooh, I'm freezing my ass off tonight, So there's a point in there that you can get good enough stuff to get by pretty well. And you don't have to carry 75 pounds.
They just let the pendulum swing the wrong way too far.
Yeah. And it depends on the season, but I think it's fairly reasonable to get in with a total weight, including your water and your rifle, of somewhere around 40-ish, depending on how heavy your rifle, what optics, what season exactly, if you're splitting stuff with someone. But I think that most of the people that I hunt with and that work for us, because a lot of us are backpack hunters ourselves, most of them get by right around 40 pounds. Some a little less, some a little more.
And that's everything, including their rifle.
Yep.
That says a lot. And then for those that would like to check out your product, some places that they should go and visit, and then you have some changes coming. Should they watch online for that?
Yeah. Well, our Facebook is Facebook Seek Outside. Our YouTube is Seek Outside Gear. Our Instagram is Facebook. Our website is seekoutside.com. You can sign up for our mailer, get notified right off the bat of the new stuff that's coming. I would like to elaborate on that 40-ish pounds a little bit. I think a reasonable breakdown for people is about 25 pounds of gear, 5 to 10 pounds of food and water, depending, and whatever their rifle, optics, whatever that is. My rifle stuff is about 7 pounds. And, my binoculars give me about, everything all combined is about 8 to 9 pounds. Some people, have heavier rifles. Some people probably have a little bit lighter ones. But I think that breakdown, and I plan most hunts, I plan 3 to 7 days, and it just depends. I mean, sometimes you have a high degree of certainty that, or maybe you don't know, and you're like, if I'm not seeing anything in 3 days, I'm out of there. Some days you're like, I'm preparing to spend a week there. But I think 5 to 10 pounds of food, water, and about 25 of gear that gives you a pretty good breakdown.
That's really good information. And as far as satellite communicators, spot, ham radios, for guys that are coming out there, land navigation, maps, learning how to use a compass, do you think that stuff is super important for when they get themselves up in that area?
I use the DeLorme InReach religiously. It gives my wife peace of mind. It gives me peace of mind to actually be a little more aggressive at times, although not stupid aggressive. Mm-hmm. So I think it gives a little bit of peace of mind. Weather in the mountains can change. So you can pull point forecasts as well. It costs you some money, but you can pull a point forecast to get something updated as well. So I use that religiously. I use the EarthMate mapping app with it most of the time, because that's just how I map stuff a lot of times. I know a lot of guys use Onyx. Onyx, they've done a fine job at a lot of stuff. It's kind of a battery pig, and I don't necessarily like having to download these maps, where with EarthMate I can download like half the state of Colorado and have it on my phone and not really worry about it.
Nice.
I can do these giant swaths of land, and it's not as big. Or Onyx is more of a pig. I think Onyx gives people more confidence in the backcountry. I think the confidence part is very important for people as well.
And you bring up a good point with the weather. A lot of people look at a 10-day forecast, and I wouldn't bet my life on a 10-day forecast. I mean, even a day or two out sometimes can change rather quickly, especially in maybe higher terrain and country you're unfamiliar with.
Yeah. I mean, those long-term forecasts have very rarely held for me during hunting season, no matter where. I don't know if it's the time of the season, but they very rarely hold well enough.
Well, the last thing I want to touch base on, so everybody can go over to seekoutside.com. You have a great pack sizing video in which guys can, I think that's something that's not explained a lot when people are trying to size packs and fit packs and talk about gear. So you do a great job explaining all of that. And how important is it?
It becomes more important as the weight goes up. And there's a lot of body fit and a lot of variance in body types. I do believe that we have the most adaptable fit available for just about anybody. I think we have a very close to custom fit. People that are not savvy may become frustrated and may want to throw a pack on out of the box. But if you're planning to carry more than 30, 40 pounds, it's really in your best interest to really spend some time finding the fit that works for you and dialing it. And sometimes, and to also not have preconceived notions as well, because a lot of times what happens is someone's buddy tells them, you need this, right? Well, and then they go around, I need this. Well, they've already had a preconceived bias to it. But the reality is their body's different than their buddy's body. Because this worked for their buddy, it may not work for them. And they need to work through the process. They really do. And if they do, they'll have a very enjoyable experience, or as enjoyable experience as you can have. But I get it. I mean, sometimes we want a really simple solution, but the pack is not the place, especially if you're looking for a pack that carries more than 30 pounds, which I'm going to assume if you're big game hunting, you're going to plan on carrying more than 30 on it, and you're not using horses. I think you really need to spend the time to get the right fit.
Yeah, and if you get something, you're probably carrying way more than 30 pounds, taking it out piece by piece. Well, I personally want to say thank you for A, taking the time to come on the podcast, but then B, being such a great innovator and coming out with not just somebody, everybody rinses and repeats, but really taking the time to come up with better products and just fantastic tools for us to get out there and enjoy the outside. Like from the pack designs to the tents and everything that you thought about it, I really appreciate it. And I just want to say thanks, from our perspective, to putting product out there that really could change not only enjoyment, the safety and everything else, but product that really works, that is what it's supposed to be.
Awesome. Thank you.
So if anybody wants more information, they can stop over to seekoutside.com. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on, Kevin.
Thank you. You have a good one.
Well, I have to say that was really an awesome interview. I want to thank Kevin for taking the time out of his schedule to come on. Again, great information by people who actually not only, live the life and they use this product and they depend on it, but then to take the time to come up with innovations to make a better product for all the right reasons, for themselves and for the general public, just to put a better product on the market by people who know what these things should be or could be if someone were to take some time to address some of the issues. So thank you so much, Kevin, for taking the time to come on the podcast. Really enjoyed it. Looking forward to when we come out over the summer here. We're going to take a trip out west and stopping in and seeing the facility and talking with the guys in person. That is on the bucket list as well. So I do want to take a quick moment before we continue on with some closing things. Thank you so much to MDT for sponsoring the podcast as well. MDT makes awesome chassis from the ACC right down to the HNT 26 hunting chassis. You really can't go wrong. So if you're looking to upgrade your rifle or if you're building a custom rifle, take time to go over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com and look at the selection of stocks they have there. Great company, great people, and awesome product. All right, so without making this podcast too long, I do want to take just a couple quick minutes for some updates. We did send out on YouTube lots of really cool videos, including a video we did on bolt manipulation and how to try to help you cycle the bolt faster. You can stop over to our YouTube page there and see everything there. It's Wolf Precision. You can also stop over to Facebook. We always post up our videos on our Facebook page. That's Wolf Precision as well. And we did update and have launched our level 201 and 301 classes preparing for the hunt. So as we talked about with Seek Outside, when you're talking about the tents and you're talking about hot tents and you're talking about, your backpacks and all of this gear and equipment, a lot of times we don't get the opportunity to put it through the test before we take it on that big game hunt. So the 201 class is going to be held in West Virginia. It's going to be taking some guys out on the mountain, putting all of their equipment through the test. But at the end of the day, we're going to go back, have dinner, and enjoy a nice evening, and then go back out and do it again. So on the 301, though, it's a little bit different. It's a 2.5-day event. It's going to involve 3 to 4 people helping and only 4 clients. And we're going to do almost what we would consider like a backpack type hunt, where we're going to have you come up on the mountain with all of your equipment. We're going to leave the trucks at noon and we're going out for 2.5 days, spending the night on the mountain, bringing all the appropriate equipment, and really giving you the opportunity to not only put it all through its paces, learn all the little quirks of getting it organized and keeping it dry and things that you like placed here but don't like placed there, chance to do a pack dump with a professional guide and backpackers and people that are going to look at your equipment and evaluate it and try to give you some pointers and tips, and then mix in there all kinds of great shooting at real world distances and from real world positions that you're going to get stuck in as a shooter. So we're looking forward to that. We're only going to do one of each. They are both announced in June, and you can register online at wolfprecision.net today. So we're really looking forward to a great year. Thank you so much for Kevin for coming on. And if you come to the shooting schools, you come to different events, you're going to see some Seek Outside equipment, get a chance to check it out in person. If you're preparing for one of these and you don't have this equipment, I highly recommend you go and see their equipment at seekoutside.com, and you can check out all the really cool stuff. We will be doing some video reviews and stuff of our equipment through the seasons as we get out and get a chance to enjoy them. So we'll be posting that up probably later this year. But again, stop over to seekoutside.com and check out all the really cool stuff that they do, and American made. That says it right there. And quality. That says it right there. So if you're looking for quality, looking for American made, their company's still here making this product. I really recommend you take a look at it. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you are listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.